a part 2 of the video here. Now I'm doing this as both a stream and a recording, so we'll have well, I'm going to do the stream and then I'm going to export it as a recording here later, so we'll have basically more interaction, or etc, etc. So we're picking up off of last time where we worked on the ore blocks. Now the ore blocks don't have textures, they don't look like anything, they don't have proper translations, etc, nothing. But they work, sorta. There's definitely quite a bit we still have to do. We have to take care of the setting system, which we haven't implemented as of yet. We'll get to that later. It's not as important to make sure that you can disable the block at the moment, but of course we will give that option. The primary thing right now is to get the rendering done and then do the recipes. So we're going to close a few things here so I can actually navigate. I've been back and forth working on quite a few mods last few days here, so we've already gotten rid of everything but this entry here. So actually, let me see, is there anything calling you? There's not, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of that too. That way it's completely gone. I think the only reason I was keeping that enum just so I could double check values. And now we want to set up some render code here. So scroll down here, go to the content folder, go find our ore, and we're just going to make a new JSON called render. And of course our tag is going to be render. I think I can memorize all this or do all this all from memory. Our render type is going to be block. Let's actually take a look at one of the other tiles real quick so I make sure I don't mess this up. It's not looking there. One of the great mods to go take a reference from will be the commission mod I've been working on for quite a while here. And we'll go look at its renders. We'll also probably grab some of its recipes too. Got quite a few recipes actually. Okay, here's this render, pretty straightforward. Yeah, I got the type right. I just couldn't remember what the other parts were because it's content ID and everything else. So type block. Our content ID is going to be the ID of the block itself. So it'll be this plus Volts Engine. It's how the system uses this to refer to as a unique instance of an object, which makes sense. We're not going to end up using that. We're actually going to use the texture system here. So instead of referencing a texture and then doing everything else, we're going to actually initialize our texture directly here. So render type, and our ID is going to be the ID of the subtype. I think the render system is set up to do this, so it should save us some time. And let's go take a look at what our textures look like while we're at it too. That way, I might be able to use a for loop to set this all up so we don't have to do a lot of work. Of course, let's get this set up first. So our domain is going to be Volts Engine. And then the other part is name, which name is going to more than likely be 10 ore. That's where I'm thinking we might be able to get away with using a for each loop. So we want to scroll down here, go to assets, textures, blocks. It does look like we have a little bit of various. Just stone underscore like the name and then ore. So this would be stone underscore percent ore and then underscore ore. And if I am correct on this, it does look like everything is set up right. We have apparently iron ore in there even though we don't use it. So there's stone 10 ore. So that would work. So how a for each loop works is you go for starters you for each. Then you come down. I could get this all typed in right. This would be under the data section for the for each loop. And you come up here and you do values, which is an array. And then we'd actually set up entries for this. So our first value would be 10, and so on. What we're actually going to do to cheat real quick for this is we're going to copy the subtypes. And then we're actually going to use ID for this, because that should give me the ID of everything. And that makes sure that everything matches too. So if it matches XID, then that's what we're rendering. Now we don't have to use everything we put into the array here. So for example, we could leave extra data in here that we're not using. Like for example, I could put ID in here, and then I could turn around and use some other value. And then what ID would be used for is kind of almost like a comment. Like what does this render? And so that's ID, and then that means we come down here and we change that to ID. And that looks like that will actually work. Let me check some of the unusual ones like Mags and Night. That is called Mags and Night. And then Bauxite would be the other one. Yep. So they're all named exactly how they appear in here. I think, yeah, there's uranium, platinum. We already saw tin there. There's zinc. Looking for lead. There's lead. Silver. Copper. Yep, we have all the textures here. And these, by the way, the order of this doesn't really matter, although it does help to kind of keep it in the same order you have over here, just so you can double check it. As well, when they load into the game, they'll load in this order as well. So that way, when you're debugging to check to make sure all the renders are loaded up, then you will see them in that order. But this will create automatically for us. This will load our textures for us automatically and assign it to the render. And we're done. Yeah, that's just literally how the textures are going to load up, and pretty straightforward. So we'll go ahead and launch the game. And then once we confirm that this works, we'll then work on the recipes. So the recipes are going to be straightforward. We just need to make sure we convert our object to some object. And it's going to be the ore block to an ingot. And the theory is, well, we might have to add some code. That's what I'm thinking theoretically, is that we want to use ore dictionary value as the output. And the reason we want to use an output ore dictionary value is that we don't really care what kind of ingot it turns into as long as the ingot is convertible to our ore dictionary names. This will make sure that if the ingot is disabled in Volt's engine, but then IC2's ingots are still there, then it'll work. Although we would want to prefer to use our ingots primarily. We could make code for that. It wouldn't be too difficult to do. What we would have is we'd have a... well, we might not be able to do a for loop. We could do a for loop. Yeah, I think we can get away with one. Just have to... Nah, we would have to make it... We have to manually make the entries. The reason we have to manually make the entries is the meta values won't match up. So it won't work easily that way. But we'll toy with it. First things first, make sure the renders work. I guess while that's loading, I'm going to open this soda I have. Personally, I like this a lot better than the Minecraft's JSON system for this. Although the two are not inherently more complicated than each other. I'm not exactly sure what the Minecraft system looks completely when you have to do subvariants. But being able to just quickly go like, here's our template, which is what this basically is, template. We just call it data though, but template would be an acceptable word. And then we do all our subtypes. Which I'm going to collapse these down, that way they don't take up as much space. What I might also come down through later and redo the for each loop, so that way you can use primitives here, so you don't have to use an object. Because this is what this is a JSON object. Start bracket and bracket are objects. And it's a little tedious, so what would be kind of nice is to be able to just put the word 10 in here. Although if we did that, then there would be some kind of default word that you would have to use down here, like value. And it's not a horrible idea. I'll toy with that later. We made it past the texture load phase. I think we have. So let's go over to our data, build JSON data. And I want to go to textures, and we want ore. Search. I only see those guys. So our textures are going to actually start with the word stone. I'm not seeing them load. Still not seeing them. That's actually kind of concerning because that could mean that this file didn't load at all. What we could look for real quick, because it could just be that the texture entries weren't registered properly, which it happens. Let's reload one more time and then search. That should have loaded stone ID ore. Let me just type in the word 10 maybe. No, that's not a good sign. Rebuild JSON data. And then we want to go over. Actually, I just rebuilt that again. Let's actually go back in here. Nope, still stone. Go to render. Okay, so we definitely do have this, so let's open this up. It does recognize that there is a state for platinum ore. Oh, we made a mistake here. We only have one state, therefore it's kind of screwed up. So yeah, that's not gonna load because everything's gonna be platinum ore. I'll even show you guys in game that that's the case. If the texture even loaded at all. Yep, so textures didn't work on any of these guys, even though platinum ore is probably what's coming back. It's also a localization failure. You notice how these guys have numbers on them? You're not even seeing the name of the tile either, it's just a number. That is really strange. What might also be causing that is I think has subtypes has to be turned up true. Actually, I'm gonna open up a random block here just so I can. Actually, it won't work. I'll have to go down all the way down here and find a block. So I'm looking for block data and control has. Really? Yeah, you're not matching. Okay, you definitely should have the word has subtypes. I think it's maybe the items are the ones that have the subtypes on them automatically. And I think how it works is that the meta version of the block actually has its own handling for has subtypes. There we go, get on localized name. Oh yeah, there's some really weird methodology for how you do localizations. Oh, apparently I got somebody at the door. Apologies for that short interruption. Mailman dropped off a couple boxes. No clue what's in the box. Anyways, so there's a localization that is set. And... what do you even use that? If gets, etc. So if metadata values damage does not equal null and damage localization. So we need to put meta localization to localization name. Oh yeah, that's the reason why it's not working. So we got the localization names aren't set up properly. So we gotta make sure we do that, because that's something I probably neglected when we were working on this last time. And I need to go find lang here, ENUS. Type in the word 10 until we find OR. So it looks like how I've got it localized. I've literally got it localized to treat it like it's an individual block name, which is strange. Make sure there's not any more instances in here, because that could be one of those cases where I had an instance in here and I changed it. And that's how they're set up. So their name is OR10. So that'll work. That's pretty much exactly what we need to do, is just do that. So they'll fix the localization. Really weird that I got set up that way. Get unlocalized name. Probably should cache this. Oh, there's a cache. Not used though. Oh, it is cached. It's just I'm oblivious to the world. So that's all set up. That should work. Then we need to look at the render code, which will be in block base. It's probably likely that this isn't set up properly. The JSON system kind of is still a little new on some of these. Get icon from JSON. So likely this method should be overridden in here. It's not. This will be real easy to actually handle. Because what we'll do is we'll make a sub method, protected string array, get tags maybe. Yeah, we'll just do this. So be inside int meta. And what we'll do is return this. And we just need to change this. Kind of want to maybe design this as a list. Even that wouldn't work. A stack would be nice. Yeah, I like the idea of a stack. Let's do that. Stack equals new linked list, I believe is what it is. Maybe it's just new stack. Apparently, yeah, it's new stack. So what this will do is we'll make a thing here, so it'll be stack. This will be void. And then essentially what we'll do is we'll push things onto the stack. pretty much in reverse order. So essentially all these have to be turned upside down. So stack dot push onto the stack. Because how stacks work is the last thing you put on the stack is the first thing to be pulled off of the stack. It's kind of like a stack of dishes. It's a way to think about it. The reason why I want to do it this way is because if we go super stack from the other thing, then it will populate our stack with objects and it will pull off of the stack the latest item to be added, which will work really, really well for us because we want to make sure that the last thing we put on there is the first thing we render, which will be our meta derivatives, which will have the word tile, or it'll have the word or actual short duration word for whatever we're working on. So the first thing we're going to try is block metadata. Actually, we want to try metadata last. Hold on. Change this again. Because we want to try to offer up the use of the cardinal directions before we try to use the meta values. There we go, so that'll work. And we come up here and we go, okay, render states, stack, side, meta. And then I wonder if I could just put stack in here. Maybe I should also declare the type of stack it is. Hopefully, this actually iterates properly. We can actually go check out iterates. So there should be an iterator here. So push, pop, peek, empty, search. It extends vector, so vector probably has the iterator on it, which it's on a rateless system. I have a feeling it doesn't iterate the way I think it does, so what we need to do is we gotta replay this. So while stack dot peek doesn't equal null, string key equals stack dot pop. Actually, we don't need to check null here. We need to go check stack is empty. So while it's not an empty, we keep going through, and I'm going to put a null check here just because this is meant to be used by other developers, so there's a high up possibility that people could mess up. Anyways, final, put final here, put final here to note we're not changing things. All the finals. Okay, so that'll work. Then we just need to override this into our block render method, or I mean our meta version. Then we can go super, okay, render state, stack, side, and meta. So that'll pre-populate these values in there, and then we just have to go ahead and add our own values. So what we want to do is push tile, and then we want to get our meta value here, which means we want to do, yeah, so we got our metadata. Meta, what's actually the key to that? It's called metadata. Data doesn't equal null. Because if our data equals null, then we're just going to let the super run and do all this stuff. Then we get this plus data dot ID. Yeah, ID will work. And then we'll also push, before it, a version that doesn't have the tile in it. So we want to run tile then it first, because that's more likely what people are going to use. And then we'll run the without the tile in case you want to be lazy. So that should run this one, then to this one. Then it'll go through these, basically, from most recent to last entered. That looks good, but not right over that. So that should fix our rendering. And then now we just gotta figure out why the textures didn't load up. Because this all looks good. That part looks good. I'm just gonna have to go ahead and run it again and then we'll just see if it loads. These are slowly getting all of the content switched over to the JSON now. So we do this one, then I just gotta do the gem blocks, and then we can hit the resources up, and that will eliminate most of the code for the content and Volt engine. Should make it a lot easier to turn the content on and off as well, because then all the logic is controlled via the JSON file. Because it won't have a setting which you can run and then turn this off. Here's another good thing also about this. If we want to add more order blocks in the future, it's just real easy to add new entries to this. I don't even have to edit this either. I can just tell somebody like, hey, you want that new order block in there? Just add a line, and then you're done. And I think we have 6 more slots for order blocks on this. So we can put 6 more into this file. And then we'll just have to make a new file, which I went over, I think, in a different stream/video, saying we could make some kind of system where we can call extend and then just change the subtypes out. Some kind of prefab or template system. Nice little squid monster there, Atomic. I'm actually impressed that that renders on the chat system for the overlay. They must have that hooked up to the API rather well. Alright, what phase are we in the load time? Minecraft will actually... There we go. So we're still in phase 1. Once this gets out of phase 1, then we can check to see if the texture's loaded. Okay, should load. Actually, it's just now initializing Minecraft engine, so it may have not actually loaded the textures yet. So give it a second. Not that it really matters. If I hit reload, it doesn't affect anything. It's a read-only action, which means it's thread safe. Sorta. There is a way to cause it to crash. Okay, we're in phase 2, so I can go hit reload on this. So I want to check to see if we have textures. I'm still not seeing the textures in the entry list here. That either something's not getting initialized properly, or it's showing up in the wrong place. Let's type in stone in here. Nope, still not in there either. I guess it's case sensitive. Yeah, it's case sensitive. So we got 10 states, which sounds right. We have 10 ore blocks. And they're set to the right ore. It's identifying the texture entries. Now, whether or not those textures actually exist is a different story. We can update this so we can check this in a second if we load in game and well, actually, we just load in game. That's a good way to test it. If we load in game and then they don't show up, then that would probably be the reason. And we just need to go check the texture load code. Oh, no, they're working. Localization is still being finicky because it's appending the number at the end of it along with trying to use the localization string. That shouldn't happen. Item block meta. That could be that the item block isn't being registered, maybe. Let's put an entry there, and if I hover over, then we can watch it run. Okay, I have the word meta in here along with meta localization. What? That really shouldn't happen. So let me go see if I can figure out where that's coming from. It's probably somewhere up here. Set block name, replace mod. So data.localization. So we get the localization, which is by default mod and then name. Which, let me pull this open. Actually, we were still in here. So it's still doing tile.voltsengine, so the mod part's getting put in there properly. So that's, I mean, it looks okay, at least in the front part. Just I don't get what's up with this. Set block name, set resistance. Let's go back over to block meta and see if it's got some weird hook in here. 2-string, drop, subtypes. It's got the meta key. So let's see where the meta key is being used. Ah. Block dot has subtypes. It forces it on there. So what we probably want to do is we probably want to check the default here and then change it. I feel like this might break some other localizations, but if it does, we just come back through and change it. Block property data dot equals. That won't fix itself until we reload, but at least the textures are working. Get rid of that. And we just gotta wait till the game recovers. It's still not replacing meta location though, so meta localization. Okay, it's not detecting that. It's not detecting that there's a localization at all for the subblocks. So let me go check to see how this is loaded in. So there's OR names, index. Ah, that's why. So I think we're using the word name for subtypes now. So let's go over here. Yes. Okay. So this will be, we'll just mark this legacy, because I don't really care to use the word localization anymore. And we're going to switch this over to name. Actually, apparently we can just do this. And those will just mean the same thing. So that'll fix when we reload. Other than that, it looks good. Let's go ahead and place some of these down. Yeah, textures look fine. Dropped item looks good. Third person looks fine. Okay. So we're gonna just want to reload then, and I guess we're gonna do recipes now. New JSON file. And I'm gonna have to go look up what these recipes even look like, because it's been that long since I've done a furnace recipe via the JSON system that I actually don't remember what they look like. This should be, I think it's in the implementation, so it's actually down here. Okay, so input, output, XP looks like. And it is expecting to see a JSON primitive for each. And if we look at the furnace recipe data, it's going to convert it to stack. So we actually do need to put some notes here. To do add support for JSON objects. The reason why we want to do that because then that allows us to use MBT on the output. I don't think the input can support MBT though. So even if we put something on here special, it just wouldn't work. And we'll also make another note, I guess, on that same regard to do check if furnace can do MBT. Because if we can't do MBT, we might as well not even support the JSON object system. But we probably will anyways, just because it's easier to type in than it is the current system. So input then output. So, and what is the processor ID? It is furnace recipe. This will be furnace recipe 10 is what we'll call this. As I've noted before in a couple of videos, whatever comes after this doesn't really matter as long as it doesn't overlap with something else. So you could actually use this to note what your recipe actually is. And I might actually start building up a key system that actually uses this as well, so you can actually find your recipes after you've loaded them and figure out what's what. So input's going to be Pulse Engine, VE, stone ore. I think that actually does work. Let me actually look at how the two-string thing's processed. Okay, so if objects into the string, it contains this or contains a separator. Convert item entry. Okay, so this actually will support the JSON item entry system by default. We just have to save it. And of course we gotta prefix it, so I forgot about that part. So we just need to note that's a block. It'll actually attempt to auto fix that technically. It'll do OR dictionaries. So we can do OR dictionary values then. Just the furnace recipe doesn't like OR dictionaries. This doesn't support metadata. Do you support metadata stuff? Well, I mean, of course you support metadata, but yeah, you support the item conversion. Okay, so we're going to want to update the furnace recipe processor to do JSON entries, which is going to take me a second to figure out how to do. This is JSON gen data, convert entry, JSON item entry. See if I can get lucky and I can find something that uses it. Okay, you just stored as data. Okay, you create an entry from JSON item stack object. So this will actually handle it for us. I think they're... Oh yeah, we can call this method. So get item from JSON, and that will do all the work for us. So now I just gotta find the furnace processor again. And as source as a thing. So what we want to do is pull that. And then we don't even want to actually convert this to a primitive, we just want to get the value and store it as is. And we'll do the same thing down here. And that will handle that for us automatically. And then we don't have to worry about it. We still need to check to see if we can support MBT, because if we can't support MBT, what we want to do down here is actually do some error throwing. So we go if input, well actually we can't do that. So we do want to figure out some kind of check. Actually, I think I know how to do it. So if input instance of JSON item entry, then we want to scan the MBT, because what it will do, it actually will load the MBT up here, and actually we can go back to that, and input dot mbt doesn't equal null. So that way, if we do have MBT, we can throw a warning at the least. We want to definitely put a warning in chat, if not an error. Warning probably be better. So that'll work. And then that's gonna means we have to switch this to item. You know what? I don't think it's actually what it's called, so maybe we'll get the entry for that. It's called the stone ore. Yeah, so that recipe would not have even loaded if I didn't type that in. And then this lets me do the meta value as 10, and it will find the entry. At least I think it's how that works. I need to find the JSON processor for this. I need to kind of move this to its own processor, like a conversion system, and that would make that a little nicer. So it does support meta and damage. It gets them both as a string. And then it actually will store damage as a string from the looks of it. And then it will parse it. It will attempt to turn it into an integer. If it can't turn it into an integer, then it will attempt to, down here, if I can get rid of this real quick, it'll try to do the iJSON conversion system. And it is going to use the object for that. So right now the object would be a block, so we need to apply this to our block, or it will not work. And the cool thing about the iJSON meta conversion system is that it allows us to use the meta value's name. Anyways, we want to pass back -1, say we didn't convert it. Yeah, for -1 it just returns null. Yeah, it's an error state. And then we want to essentially loop through our metadata. So metadata. And go if data doesn't equal null, because we can't have null entries, and data.id equals ignored case value. We want to do equals ignored case, that way it's a little simpler to understand this. So if you accidentally uppercase your word when you're doing your recipes, it'll still run. And then return data.index. And that should run. And this should 2-stack. The only concern I have with this trying to do a 2-stack I'd even support two-stack convert. It doesn't have handling for the JSON stuff. I guess what we can do is we just add an entry here. To be honest, I really want to deprecate that method, but we're not going to do that. Actually, does a conversion system... Nah, conversion system pretty much does strings only. But yeah, we do this, and what you do is you just return that, which will return that without a problem. Do that. So that'll work. In theory. Good thing I caught that though, because that would have caused some problems. And I guess right here is where we can check to see how the smelting function stores it. So it stores it as in item stack list. It puts it into a map. The weird thing about putting stuff into that map is that you can't match an item stack to another item stack. It just doesn't work properly. So get smelting list, get smelting result. It loops everything. I might want to cache this, because I can make this faster by like a huge magnitude if I turn that into a cache system. I could also there's a way I could build a hash map so you can match item stacks with each other, because I know how the fundamental hash map works. I might try that here later, because what I could do is I could sneak in here and edit this system here without anybody noticing. And then when you call get result, I could actually have it match best possibility. But what we can tell here for sure is that you can't use MBT. So let's go ahead and go back to our processor, and we want to push a 1 and off. Let me make sure that MBT is not initialized at some point. So if has no tags, set MBT. Let me go see what this is initialized at. Okay, so it's only loaded if we have something. And what we also want to do is we're going to go with entry.mbt.has no tags. So if we have no tags, entry.mbt equals null. So we aren't trying to assign something, and we aren't doing a check that we don't need to do. So put a warning off here. So this would be engine.logger.error. This would be JSON furnace recipe processor. Input for recipe, and how are we going to word this? It's going to be, we'll just, I guess, do input to output pretty much. Input for output. MBT is not supported. And we'll just put a comma there, so it'll show you kind of what recipe's being loaded. That way you can get some kind of indication of where it came from. What I need to start doing is passing in the file source into this process method, so you know where the file came from, so when you print an error out, you can inform the system. What I might also do is just have it throw an exception here, or fire some kind of system. Like it might go JSON content loader.error, and it'll be like false for crash, you put at the end. But then what it would do is it'll pop up the error state going, okay, here's an error, here's what the file loaded it from, here's how deep we are in the file loading process, or something like that. And that might improve it by a massive amount. XP is less than 0. Throw new. I just noticed there was not an error down there, so I'm going to put one down there. XP for recipe. Let me make sure we put the recipe at the end of here. Fix my spelling here. Okay, so that way we'll throw an error if the XP is below a certain value. And forgot the semicolon at the end there. That'll work. So now we can continue on with the recipe. So we got our metadata set up here. Now we just need to do the output. And this is where things get interesting, because what I want to do is do ore at ingot 10, I think is what it is. I'm trying to remember how the ore dictionary names go. I guess we can come over here. So I think it's, yeah, that sounds right, because it's type then material is how it goes. So it's like ore 10, then ingot 10, and plate 10. I think so. So we'll be able to check that in a second. And then what I need to do is I need to go to the toStack method again here, which we can close this guy. So here's the data. So if we go to get the output and we go toStack, it's already set up. So if it figures out it's an ore name, it's going to grab the first ore that's not null. And then we want to... I just noticed something. Is this copying it? It's not. Item stack copy, because if we don't want to return the actual entry, equals stack.copy, copy.stack size equal 1. We want to make sure we set the stack size. There's a very bad habit. Sometimes developers have a tendency to set that stack size to 0. I'm going to copy that, and that'll work. So now all we have to do is we have to populate all our recipes. And from what I can see, we could, in theory, make this work with a for loop. So let's go to our render, copy the for loop from here, and what we'll have to do is we'll just have to program our furnace recipe to identify for loops and use them. Do this, remove that. And then we're using ID, so %ID. And then we just have to come through and capitalize the first one of these. Because what will happen is when it does the metadata thing, it's going to decapitalize it for us, so that way it runs properly. Or rather, it's doing an equals ignore case check. So if we capitalize this one, then it'll fix our ore system, so that way it matches it correctly. Because unfortunately, the ore dictionary is not, it's not lowercase, so it's case sensitive. Although I could make a system for identifying based off of non-case sensitivity, but we're not doing that. Okay, so that'll work. It'll do all our recipes automatically for us. Make sure that's formatted. That's actually not bad. This will much easier than I thought it was going to be. Now we just got to program the furnace recipe system, which we're just going to do Control B, and then we're going to jump to it. So how this is going to work is we have to take this piece of section here, come down here, which we don't want to actually, well, no, actually hold on, we can leave this as this, because there's a really cool thing I can do. Process is only called from this method up here, and of course this one down here. So all I need to do, well, actually I have two options for this. So I can modify these in my recipe class, or I can globally modify these for all of them. I like the idea of globally modifying these better. So what we want to do is we're going to go if element.has, or actually, hold on, we want to convert this to a JSON object, don't we? If element, well, element's almost always going to be a JSON object to start with. So JSON object, or not JSON object, it needs to be JSON object. Data equals element dot get as JSON object, and we go if data dot has a for loop. So we got to check for two different data sets. Now let's change this to JSON object. And then the alternative is that it's just a normal object, so you just load it like that. This will be a for each. And then JSON for loop generate data for loop. So JSON object. Actually, it's not JSON object. It'd be JSON object dot get for loop. We want a list of states, injection keys, in depth. So elements. Actually, I think this is JSON objects. I think it always produces JSON objects. Okay, we go element. Go new array list. So that should produce what we need, and then what we have to just do is go for JSON object elements, and then we pretty much just do this right here, except that instead of passing an element, we're passing an object. So we repeat that down here for the for each. The only difference is for the for each is you just call it for each loop. But it's relatively pretty much the same process. And yeah, there we go. So that will handle for each loops on pretty much everything. What I want to do though is to make this even nicer. Is make another method. Public, this will be protected. Protected void handle is what we're going to call it. And we of course have to pass these objects in. What we're going to do is pass this in as well. And what this will be is by default for this one. It'll be null element objects. For this one, we're going to be passing in the block, and this one would be apparently an item stack. So what this does is we're kind of setting the output object that we don't actually require it. And that reduces that, so we don't have to even update these guys anymore. They're pretty much final. Not bad. You know, I'm just starting to think like furnace recipe was the only thing that implemented that process method right there. But I doubt that's the case. No, it is implemented a few other spots. The cool thing that means the crafting recipes automatically pick up on this ability too. So you can now run for loops for these as well. And we are missing, yeah, right there. Okay. A lot more work than expected, but still easier than expected. So go ahead and debug and launch it again, and that should be just about it. And we've converted that to almost 100% JSON. Because I mean, I can't say 100% JSON half the time, because the reality of it is we do have code that still runs. It's just there's no code inherently for that. Still kind of curious why when we reload this, you don't get a lot of textures. Yeah, it's strange. It's probably the way the textures are being registered. Go find this real quick. Actually, we don't want to look at data with the processor. Actually, it's not being done there. We're doing this as part of the render processor. Actually, yeah, we did the... Yes, that's already set up for that, so I don't have to worry about that. I think it's in here. Yeah, so it has sub-object texture, set main texture. That's only if it's a primitive though. And if it's not a primitive, so it's a JSON object. Okay, if equals texture entry dot contains texture domain keys match new texture. We're not registering. I thought I switched it down. Or no, it is being client texture data dot add. It's just not being added to the processor list. So texture data equals that. Data.register, and then JSON content loader dot instance dot entries loaded from file system. That's an entry. I actually want gen objects. And we can't set this to a thing, so what we need to do is get, and I believe this is just called texture. Yeah, just called texture. So that way this will populate into a list. So we'll get the list. So list I JSON gen object. If list is null, list equals new array list. And then JSON content loader dot instance dot generate objects dot put. Of course, we have to use the key again here, but we can then populate the list back. Although we forgot to actually do list.add data. That way our texture actually show up. This will happen next time though, because we've already loaded the game. I'll have to test that on my own, but as soon as we confirm that like the localizations are done and then we have some kind of recipe, then we can call it. I actually forgot debug line. So it looks like all our ORs are working. I am not getting any kind of recipe though. So the recipes may not be loading properly. But I'm just going to call this it anyways, because that's just a debug process where I probably have to just debug the recipe system.